This week's scenario is Recon 2 from the 2019 Steamroller packet. This scenario does have Killbox Artifice in effect, and consists of flags which can be controlled for 1 CP by solos, warcasters, and warlocks, rectangular zones which can be controlled by warbeast, warjacks, warcasters, and warlocks, and an objective which can be destroyed for 1 CP. Victory conditions consist of winning 5 more control points than your opponent or caster assassination.
Hey, Derek here, back with Crucible Guard this time. So, my Syvestro build is pretty simple. You have a Toro, Retaliator, Liberator, double Railless, quad Trancer, Gorman, a Field Mechanik, Prospero with a Suppressor, Dragon's Breath Rocket, Steelhead Halbs with Mosby. It's a fairly standard list, and I have got a fairly standard deployment for it. Everything, all the constructs want to be within 5 inches of Syvestro at the beginning of the game so that he can pop his super fuel, make things really simple for me just to run up the board. I believe I won the roll to go first, so it allows me to run, I think, 16 inches with the 2 Railless. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get that far up the board because of his threat presence based on Hellmouth and the advanced deploying Deathjack.
Hello, so I'm playing Deneghra 2 in Black Industries. I had played her prior to the Oblivion changes, which are now a little older. But this is the first iteration of a list I've attempted to run since those changes came through. So a couple new things now. We're able to get the Wraith Engine into the list, which is really neat because you can feed on that to make it go incorporeal again. Also gives Deneghra a little more armor against guns, which might be very relevant here in this matchup playing against Crucible Guard. Beyond that, you also get a few less Slayers, but you get the added utility of the Cane Wraith. You get Ambush now in the list, which can force things to the middle, especially if you're trying to headhunt a little bit with her Dark Banishment and Hellmouth plays combined with Damnation. So it trades a little bit of tools for some new tools, but the list has some new interesting interactions it gets to use. We're going to put Deathjack over to my right and really try and pressure my zone.
So turn 1, as I stated previously, it's all about just pushing forward. I'm asking about threat ranges, just making sure I'm not going to do anything too crazy. So I'm just pushing up. The Trancers are sort of like a first line. They're great for later gameplay, and they're extremely good on his feet turn because they have magic weapons. But we go with Syvestro. I put out all 3 of my upkeeps. I believe it is the top of the screen. It will be Explosivo on that Railless. The Toro will receive Admonition for some sweet jank there, and then the Halberdiers are going to get Transmutation. And then we just start running everything forward. I think I was a little bit too cautious here, putting things in terrain. I understand that he has some spells, but it's like, what's the point? And again here with the main gunshot from the Railless, it doesn't really seem worth it. In hindsight, but you live, you learn. And again, just throwing everything out there, just trying to take up as much of the board space as I can on my first turn. My plan is to try and win the one flank with the Halberdiers and push through, and that's just the turn 1 plan.
So on to my turn 1. We're going to put out focus, and we're going to start looking at the table. The Admonition Toro up top with a Trancer in front of it is a bit of a pain here. I don't have a lot of good ways, actually really any ways, to remove the Admonition, and I'm playing an all-melee force. So some things I can look at trying later to set up. So we can make Machine Wraiths, and we can charge the Machine Wraith into the Toro, and basically force the Admonition out. If not, I'll get to take control of them. And if I can walk them into a spot where a Warjack doesn't have to advance, we can try and do that. But that's something to look for later. The Admonition, though, is going to be rough. So with the obstruction at the top up by his flag, it makes it really hard for the Railless to get into the zone and sit at the back of that zone to be relevant. And the center obstruction also makes it hard for it to really ram down the middle of the table. So I am expecting it to be in his zone, either towing right in front of the flag, so the majority of its space is in the middle, or kind of really swing out far to the right in front of the obstruction. So I want to put that Slayer up at the top, to try and force its positioning a little bit back if I can make it play a little more cautious. Beyond that, we want to really play off the Trancers. So the Trancers in this list are a bit of a problem. They bring their own defense buff against range attacks, and the only way I really have to reach out and grab things is the Hellslinger Phantom or spells. I can go for the spell route, but Hellmouth is fairly expensive, and if I'm Venoming, well, Venom or Hellmouth are both range 8, so I need to get pretty close with the Arc Node. So I'm basically trading an Arc Node for a Trancer, which can be worth it at times when you're playing with only heavies, but you really have to make sure that it's worth it for that Arc Node trade. One thing I have not yet mentioned is the objective I took this game was Eyeless Sight. There's a handful of stealth models, and I wanted to be able to ignore the concealment of the woods and see through the stealth with Deneghra's spells, with the Arc Node, or with the Cane Wraith. So that is something that may come up later on, but for this one we're really just positioning. So we're putting the Wraith Engine in a spot to where, unfortunately, he can't threaten the whole zone with where he's at right now, because I don't want to be too far forward against the Suppressors and the Railless, because it can just get ripped off. And then the Hermit's going to stand fairly centrally, so if he commits to anything too hard this turn, I should be able to Mad Visions it.
So my turn 2 looks a little bit too cautious for my taste, but you'll see. So I look at the board, I realize that there's not a ton I can do, seeing as he's running in Black Industries, and Carapace prevents a lot of my early game skirmish play, and his ability for far enough threat ranges that I can't just walk up and spray with my Railless. I'm just basically asking around, trying to figure out exact threat ranges, what it could be, what it can be, confirming feat, measuring threat from his ambushing unit. There's a lot of little things that I want to be wary of. I think the plan this turn is trying to scalpel out the Cairn Wraith, because that guy will be the bane of my existence in the later game. So I have 2 attempts that will need a 5 to kill him, and then another that will need a 3, or no, a 7, because it's POW 12, I'm sorry, with the Railless up top. So I just pass out, give super fuel again, make sure everybody can go where they want. I have to move the Toro out of the way to make sure the Railless can fit through there and go to his designated location up top, marked by the proxy base. So we start spraying, we're just double checking, making sure that I can potentially get something else, because why not? I mean, dice spikes can happen, and I'll take a few damage for free somewhere. I believe I failed to kill the Cairn Wraith with the first spray that I hit with. I believe I miss with the main gun, and I scatter onto the Jack over there and then back out, because I don't think I was able to kill it, unfortunately. It would have been a nice little benefit. I'm trying to kill it with some blast damage, maybe. No such luck. Or maybe I was just trying to... Actually, because he's incorporeal, I can't even hurt him with that. Whatever the case. I'm just preparing for turn 2. I try and screen the Railless up top there with a Trancer, but I mess up his angle. And I think right now I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do with my other Railless, because I kind of hemmed him in with all of the Halberdiers. So I'm just trying to clear him out, pull a Trancer back to keep him safe, wait for later on to slam some Jacks around. Just moving my Arc Node back a little bit. In hindsight, again, I should have moved him a little out to the side. Again, I take a shot that's mostly useless, unfortunately. Probably just a waste of clock at that point. And then obviously we go with the Halberdiers that are going to just basically make a little wall to keep the Railless safe, or an attempt to. And then Prospero, since he can run 16 inches, he just kind of goes where he wants and stays safe.
So going into my round 2 has given me a lot to think about. There's a few things that are in threat ranges, really on both sides of the table, but it's focus intensive to do all of it. So he's given me a pretty hard choice here. And then Syvestro's feat in return can really become problematic if I overextend. So things we're looking at and considering are the Railless up at the top is just hanging out of the zone, and that zone's edge to the side of the table is 12 inches away. So Brute Thralls can threaten to the Railless, but there's a transfer right behind it, so that free strike would kill Brute Thralls with, about 9 times out of 10. Then beyond that, there's a admonitioned countercharging Toro right in the middle. So if I just send a Slayer in without planning this ahead, we just get the Slayer countercharged and likely systems out, and there's not really another heavy I positioned up at the top to trade back into that Toro if I allow that. Beyond that, almost everything's just out of the threat range of the Wraith Engine on the bottom. So there's a lot of things to consider, but at least in terms of the long-term game plan here with where things are at, the center obstruction is really good for me, especially if I'm holding feet for later. So I can swing through that. Syvestro took the objective so that I can't place him, so I really don't have any long-reaching grabs to Dark Banish Syvestro into all my Warjacks. So he's by the objective he took, he's forcing me to play a scenario game, which is fine, but it's something that we have to make sure we're planning for the long game, right? Some game plans you can sometimes go for with Denegrha 2, or you play a really aggressive, round, like bottom of 2 or top of 3, to where it almost looks like you're overextending. But then you have 1 or 2 Warjacks that survive and your caster that survives, and because of how aggressive you were, it leaves their caster without much place to run to, which allows you to then go for these assassination runs on the round after you look like you're overextending. That's not really going to be an out here. I'd have to really trade trade for attrition hard on both sides to make it so Syvestro has to stay in the middle, while killing the objective the round before as well, if I plan on going for this. Which, doing all of that and still having feed up and having arc notes to do all this is too tall of a task. So we really have to start trading effectively. So going in on that Railless at the top would really make it so he has to start moving other heavies up that way, or else the top zone can just become mine. Especially with that little lip behind the forest, I can almost contest that without effort every round of this game. We are going to give Eyeless Sight, I believe, to the Cane Wraith if we haven't done that yet. That might have been what I just indicated. So that we're able to try and pick off Gorman as well. What we're pre-measuring right now and checking to see if we can do is if I move a Soul Trapper, which I'm representing with that Scrap Thrall, just in front of Deathjack, and I Hellmouth Deathjack forward, would he be able to charge the Suppressor that's just at the edge of the forest? So the answer to that question in terms of threat ranges is yes, but in terms of activation order, I don't want to slingshot Warjacks that far forward and just have them be there because they're 100% dead that next round. So I really want to make him incorporeal. So if I'm doing this plan, it means that Deathjack is hellmouthing himself forward and then charging, and then Denegrha goes to make incorporeal. So it's a lot of considering what order I want to do all of this in, especially because when Deathjack gets there, he's spending 4 for a Hellmouth. He is then charging, so he's going to get there with no focus. So it's really just both Claw Initials and the Tusks. It's not going to kill another heavy. I can attempt to cripple a couple systems, but it's really debating on if that is worth it or not. The problem is if I don't, and I play pretty soft here, Syvestro feat now gets to affect his entire army, which is scary. So we're going to consider that for a little bit longer. But for now, what we're doing is we're charging in with the Mechanitralls at the top. Based upon the angle the transfer is at, we're actually able to get all 3 brutes into the rails without taking free strikes. 2 of them are still engaged in the melee range of the transfer, and the other one charged behind his line of sight to avoid that. We did charge, I believe it was 1 or 2 Mechanithralls into the transfer. They both missed and got poltergeisted away, but yeah, it's alright. After all 3 brutes went, we left the Railless on, I think it was like 5 or 6 boxes. You can see it on Derek's phone there for a moment. So now we're going to go look to see if we can kill him. So we gave Eyeless Sight to the Cane Wraith for shooting Ghost Shot to try and pick off Gorman, which we're lucky enough to do. And we're going to take a second shot into the Railless. And with the soul we just got from Gorman, we're going to attempt to boost the damage. So what we just did right there is we shot and killed Gorman, and we Swift Hunted back, and now Derek is considering admonitioning off the Swift Hunter move, which I was not planning ahead on. So we go with the Cane Wraith, we boost this damage roll. We do get in some damage enough to finish from Railless is down to 2. So A Railless on 2 is the same as a Railless on 30 plus. So now we got to figure out if we want to commit into him to try and kill him. I don't want to just keep going on that one side of the table though. So I think we're going to go back into looking at the Deathjack plan and figuring out if that's actually the line I want to go here. The other thing I'm hoping at this is if I go with the Deathjack plan now, is that he may Admonition and countercharge into Deathjack, who I then intend to make incorporeal, and who likely won't get one shot to the point where he's losing a lot of efficiency, especially because he's already charging to that point without focus, so that the Slayer I have at the top side of the screen can go into the Railless without any worry. He doesn't go for that Admonition or countercharge, so now we're back to, do I want to send a Slayer into a Railless to finish it off, especially when he can trigger both those abilities to try and mess up the Slayer on the way in. So we have to go for it though. Leaving the Railless alive is the worst possible move. He ends up Admonitioning, and then he ends up just countercharging, leaving Admonition up. So he can no longer countercharge, but he can dance out of the way. My Slayer finishes off the Railless, and now is where we're going to start posturing with the rest of the list to get things incorporeal to keep them alive. Another really big thing this matchup, or at least big thing with this list, is, and just things I've found with playing New Black Industries, where you're getting triple Necrotech for free, is the Necrotechs are gigantic. Their ability to create Scrap Thralls has made it so that even against infantry like Halberdiers or Doom Reavers or Halberdiers in Ret, but just kind of like those Armor 14-ish models that are generally really good at killing infantry, don't want to fight against Scrap Thralls. What ends up happening is they end up killing them. They explode, and you just take PAL 7s. And sometimes it's enough just to kill models. Like, I know you need to roll a little above average, but it's free chances at it. And once you make them, if you can walk forward enough to engage them, if they choose to walk away to not be in the blast radius, now I'm getting free strikes. And they're not tremendously threatening free strikes, but they are free strikes nonetheless. So Denegrha has advanced forward. She went incorporeal this round as well, because my whole army that's engaging on the table that's relevant is incorporeal, so we can walk right through all of it. And if that happens, she will likely just blow up and die. So the Wraith Engine stays incorporeal and runs forward. All of our heavies are incorporeal, and the Arc Node at the top side of the table is incorporeal. And now we're just kind of posturing. So we want to get Necrotechs within walking range to repair our heavies. And if they're not going to be within walking range, we want them within 7 inches to gain scrap tokens to start getting our Scrap Thrall creation going.
So we move on to my turn 3 after Brad took a fairly long turn just determining what he was going to do. So it was also his feet turn. So he was able to push up, and I have fairly limited magical attacks. I think it's Trancer, Syvestro himself, and whatever I decide to put Explosivo on, the Railless, the one that I had not lost from the ambushers up top. Excuse me. So I'm basically just trying to figure out what I'm doing. There's a lot to process here. The goals of my turn: start chipping away at the ambush unit up top, because I have very, very few models up in that zone, and I know that will be an issue for me later. And then try and kill the Deathjack. So one thing I was not exactly privy to prior to this game was even incorporeal models can still be hit with hit abilities, AE, Rust. So I'm asking about this currently. And so my Suppressor that is currently, I think, sitting on like 8 or 9 boxes or something like that, after he took a charge from the Deathjack. So, Jesus, that was bad. Took a charge from the Deathjack, so he's going to back up, and he's going to rust both the Battle Engine and Deathjack. It ends up being a bit of a moot point for the Battle Engine, as I realize that there's not a ton that he can do, or I can do to it. So I move up Syvestro. I'm figuring out what I want to do. I think I end up putting a Vape Cloud on myself just to be super stealth for whatever reason. I put admonition up on myself, and I pop feet. I at this point throw my fulmination grenade at the rusted Deathjack. So he's thinking about this, and I believe he ends up visioning it from the Hermit, because it ends up being a pop strength 15 weapon master that's Signs Importance. So I'm rolling 5 dice, taking I believe it's dice off 4. Yeah, so he does vision it. I was really hoping I could get that one through, because his grenade can always do so much work, like unsuspecting. I goof up there. I was like, wait a second, I can't charge through my own models, because that's not a rule they have. So I end up just trying to figure out the puzzle on my order of activations. I believe I end up going with the Halberdiers, and I just run in and jam, because that's kind of what they're good for in this circumstance. I think I jam a little bit too hard with them, just because I end up losing a couple sprays from the Railless that I don't want to kill my own guys because of Explosivo. I also leave a couple Halberdiers in the back just so I can start regaining my troops after later on in the game. So I move the Railless up. I take a shot at the solo on his flag because I'm not going to be able to contest it this turn. I take him out. That's no problem. I believe I've repositioned the Railless backwards just to keep him safe. I take the Trancer now, charge into the Deathjack. I'm not going to be able to slam him. I will hit him, and I don't believe I cranked the damage a ton. I think I rolled fairly poor. I believe I did like 4 damage. At dice off 3, I believe it is. Or maybe 6 damage, whatever the case. It was not particularly exciting. Just move my Arc Node up just to be more of a jamming model at this point, because I don't think I'm really going to be able to use it. Also at the top there, I forget my feat exists, so I'm just rolling 2 dice. Not that it matters. But I was able to just clear a few guys out, and they're moving into position to start handling them more next turn. The Trancer goes. I believe I slammed the one into the other, killing the one Brute Thrall, and then just knocking over the other one. And then I believe I reposition even deeper, just to disrupt them as much as I can. Things to note, I believe I go in through and kill the Warwitch Siren here, because I know what they can do, and I know what they're capable of, and I'm not a fan of them. So I do that. There's not a ton I can do. I take a boosted spray into the Karen Wraith. I hit, and then I believe I am dice off 2, and he was sitting on 2 boxes because I did 3 from the previous turn. So I rolled very poorly there, even with Signs Importance, as what is unable to kill him, which again, if you remember, that was a goal from turn 1. Prospero goes to the objective, just scores that. Put a second Trancer into the Deathjack, and I believe I do a few more points of damage. Nothing too crippled on him, but that's the way it goes. I go repair my Suppressor again, just keep him healthy, see how it goes. And I believe that's me.
Alright, on to round 3. So, scenario's tied, so scenario isn't out of the question this turn to really try and push and put another soul on my flag. And I have souls down there that can do it. Clearing the bottom zone is going to be a real problem. The Halberdiers have a lot of bonuses going on right now. Plus there's the light Warjack and a Trancer in the back who's tough to shoot out. So I think my best bet's actually going to be going up to the top side, trying to work on those heavies, and then going on Prospero as well. Deathjack in the middle is still fairly serviceable, and then we have the heavy. So we're in a fairly good spot, but now we're jammed up pretty tight. So it's really trying to figure out how we're going to go about this. I don't think I have a pretty good line on Syvestro. There's just too many models in the way, and he's again, not able to be placed. So we're going to keep looking around to see where we're able to go. One thing of note is we did use Vision on the last turn. Or Mad Visions, I should say, from the Hermit. So Deneghra is a little bit more vulnerable. So I want to be cautious on where I'm placing her. Or where she's going to end the turn. I shouldn't necessarily use the term placing, because his assassination threats are still very live. I don't recall if I give her Eyeless Sight or not, but the other big reason we give a model Eyeless Sight is with Syvestro's crit blind on Stygian Abyss. I didn't want a blinded Battle Engine or if I thought his out was Assassination on a round, I didn't want him to be able to go ahead and make it so that he could blind my caster and then go in with all the guns, or make it so my Wraith Engine couldn't activate. So that's why I went with that. Our Slayer just went... He actually did less than I thought he was going to, going into that Toro. I think I knocked out movement, but that was it. I also, not to spoil things going forward, but in terms of locations, for damage on Warjacks, I loved knocking out movements. Very consistent, very good at it. The problem with that is because we're in melee and they have Cortex as a melee weapon still, it does not reduce their damage effectiveness at all. So that was a little bit of a problem. But we were going with the Machine Wraith now. I'm sorry, with the Wraith Engine to create a Machine Wraith. And we're going to start working on these Halberdiers. There are a lot of attacks if I can get them off the table. And being in Black Industries, if he's only has guns remaining, I'm in a pretty okay spot. The Wraith Engine has a tough time hitting, though, because of defensive stats on them. So we do make one. Our Machine Wraith jumps over and tags a Suppressor. And we're going to go ahead and try and take a spray with his good arm through the objective and that Trancer. In addition to turning them around backwards, so his threat range isn't as far, which should keep Denegrha much safer. And we're going to go up here with this Slayer. Really just kind of start putting the pressure on the Syvestro with being able to surround him. And we're going to go in and I think we take out the objective and that Trancer, or just the Trancer first, I believe. So that might have been a little bit of a mistake because it jumps us out and away from things, but it does push us into that light Warjack, which is a bit lucky, but again, we take out only his movement. So now Deathjack's going to go, and my plan with Deathjack this turn was to really try and use his snacking ability on the Halberdiers to make it so we get some critical damage back onto him, or critical health back onto him. Unfortunately, the Halberdiers have that tough with 4 up on the rolls, and I don't end up killing many. And then I elect to go with a Venom Spray down the line so a Slayer can get in deeper. That's what we're doing now, so we're going to, again, continue just working on these Halberdiers. I want to make it so that if I'm able to clear out that zone in the following round, I really want to be able to. So if I can eliminate most of the Halberdiers and it's down to just a Trancer, a Railless, and a Light, I think that's pretty doable. I am trying to clog up the lane between the Toro and Denegrha, because I was a little surprised at how not a whole lot of damage went into that Toro. I was expecting the Slayer to do more. I don't think there's a way to heal him, and I know his movement's out, but it's still something that can leave you a little cautious. And then we're going to jump in with the Cane Wraith, because we also, with Denegrha, when she activated, landed a Breast Dealer. So now his gunshots are going in at some pretty easier to hit targets on those Halberdiers. And again, just trying to do more work, and then we use the souls off the Halberdiers to shoot out the Trancer behind, because his slam would be real rough for me. And then we're shooting into some other non-engaged targets.
And we move on to turn 4. So the board is looking a little grim for me. However, I still have my battle group intact. However, I think every single one of them, the movement is out. He was able to cripple every single movement column I had. Thankfully, I don't have to charge anywhere. I don't have to go anywhere. He already came to me. Whatever the case, the Suppressor moves up. I'm really not sure exactly what to do, so I'm just going to apply Rust where I can. It makes it fairly manageable for me to deal with them. And then I believe I missed trying to kill the little ghosty boy there, which turned me around to begin with. And then I think I was just figuring out what I wanted to do with my second spray, and I realized it's just not worth it at that point. So up there I start clearing out some of the guys. The Trancer moves around. The infantry, well, the Dragon's Breath rocket takes shots trying to clear up the remainder of these guys. I think I do a fairly decent job. The Toro goes, and he starts swinging at the Slayer there, and I believe he does very good work into him. I think I rolled very hot for this. Oh yeah, I can even see the grid. Yeah, he's on 2 boxes. I take him out, which was fairly lucky, I feel. I I believe we go with the infantry next. Well, the halberdiers. We get a run charge order, just try and clear out the chaff. I believe I do tough no knockdown here. So I'm not able to do a ton of work, but I do some chip damage, which I'm not going to complain about. Let's see. I believe the Liberator goes next. I think I just want to walk away. I believe I'm trying to face, but the way I built my model, I positioned him way too wide, so he can't fit. He's supposed to be facing towards the suppressor. I believe I do a few damage to the one jack, though. I try and see if I had a charge with the Railless into Deathjack, which was not the case. So I settle for sprays. I think I was able to finally kill the Karen Wraith, which was much, much needed. Then I take out the Deathjack with a shooting. And then I just reposition back after missing a shot with the main gun, just to try and take something out. And we go from there. Syvestro goes, I kind of figure out, I'm not sure what to do with him. I was thinking like, oh yeah, I'll just melee him. No, I'm not meleeing anyone to death. So I just throw a fulmination grenade, boost it to hit, see what I can do. I miss, hits nothing, no one gets hurt, thankfully. And then I just go about my day. I just measure some threat ranges, see if Prospero can do anything, but unfortunately the answer is no.
So, going into round 4, we're up by 2, because he wasn't able to clear off the soul on my flag or score any points himself. So we're going to look to, I think, try and close this game out on scenario, at least grab as many control points as we can. So what we're doing is we're scoring the bottom flag already, so there's no work to really be done there. I need to kill an objective, and I need to get 2 warjacks out of the top rectangle. So the good thing here is I actually don't have to kill them because of Dark Banishment. So we're going to knock out the objective just with the Wraith Engine. Denegrha went incorporeal this round to be able to charge right through the Nightwretch. We're going to go ahead and tag the Toro. We do some damage to him, but the damage is not really my concern, but we Dark Banish him. We then go ahead and... I don't Shadow Step. Well, I could have Shadow Stepped and tried to Dark Banish the other guy, but he was so close to death that the Slayer just killed him. So we're going to score the rectangle with a flag and the objective to put us up 6-1 at the end of this round.
Yeah, so at the end of the battle, I look at it and I think that if I were to play a little bit more aggressive and understand the matchup a little better, if I were to play it again, obviously I think I'd do it. I'll get a better feel for it and I'll do better. I also feel that I need more experience with the Syvestro list. I'm still sub 20 games with him, and I've only been playing Crucible Guard for a month at that point. So like trying to understand all of the intricacies and all the interactions that they have, moving especially from Signar to Crucible Guard, it's a fairly smooth transition. It's just there's a lot of layers to it that I'm not exactly fully aware of at that point. I was still very, very glad I was able to play Brad. It was a very fun game. I thank him. It was a great opportunity, and best of luck to him in future games. Thank you.